So, you know, the lighting, we had a gel kit. Our lights were not that great. You have to understand, nowadays you could buy a Dracast light kit, a Ladybug light kit for a couple $100, a high quality directional light. The cameras, like the Blackmagic 4K Pocket, which I've talked about, the ISO, which stands for International Standards Organization. It basically is just like how sensitive the sensor is. And what it means is that you can shoot in very low light and it still looks very clean. Whereas when we were shooting back here, you were struggling to shoot at like 400 was pretty fast. So you'd still need a lot of light. So we were doing things like buying floodlights from Home Depot and sticking barn doors on them and gels. The reason why we did that is because light kits at the time were very expensive. An Omni light kit, I think, was like, you know, 3 or 4 piece Omni kit, which is the cheaper kits. It was like $1,000. We ended up doing a lot more with whatever lights we can get our hands on. But you don't have to do that. You can go and buy, I'd say if you bought 2 Dracast light kits, it was maybe like 6 lights, and then maybe grab a cheap floodlight from Home Depot in case it's at night and you really need to throw a lot of light, and then I think you'd be all set. There are really a lot of different solutions nowadays that didn't exist back then. You know, we were obsessed back then with Rambo and Rocky montages and stuff like that, so we made sure to have our weird gear up montages. When you're young, you can be a bit delusional. Some people are. I was. But that's also the reason why I made an action film. It's not really something that you would normally think to do for an independent film. I mean, you play around as kids, but to try to make an action film good enough to sell, that's a harder thing. So that is the wishing well. That's, my dad and I spent like 6 months building it. At the time, I had left CBS. At that time, I used to be a news cutter at a CBS affiliate, and I was just working random jobs, clearing up basements and stuff like that. People would throw a lot of stuff out, and for us, it was kind of a godsend because we would take, you know, random, you know, if they're throwing out like a box of hinges and bolts and stuff like that, you know, we could take that and nail them to the well. We tried to make the well look very antique and old, and for it to have like a mechanical look to it, like it was more than just a wishing well. So these were just, you know, fight scenes we came up with. You know, we were trying to emulate fight scenes from the end of Commando. You know, when we're trying to emulate The Matrix, we were trying to emulate action hero type stuff. Maybe a touch of Van Damme, but that, you know, that was about it. This kind of shows off the parts of the well. I just wanted to point out there's this shot here where it's like you're sort of at the bottom of the well looking up through. And you see, it's sort of like, you know, 1 story down. So you might be thinking, how did you do that? Did you really dig like a 30-foot hole or something? And no, we actually shot that at the playground. We went to the bottom of a slide, and we had Phil Dangle sort of pretending to be like he was vertical when it was more horizontal, with his limbs flailing, and then it was silhouetted, and then I could tint it dark blue, so that actually works. So you would be surprised how many weird things you can fool if you're just creative. We had to actually manually move those buckets to get it to work. This is a montage we had to add in later to show the water was seeping into the ground and the water supply and stuff like that, to show that when the well, it's sort of like blood is spilt at the whale starts running again and poisoning the land kind of thing. The nighttime stuff is more successful than the daytime stuff. I think the nighttime stuff actually looks more cinema-like. If you see this daytime stuff here, I don't think it looks very good. In Ridley Scott films, like Blade Runner, he would use the darkness, so he would use night. He would call it as his armor. So night was a kind of armor, and then he used smoke, and that was a kind of armor, and then he used rain, and that was a kind of armor. And those elements would lock the aesthetic into a consistency, and it would maintain the quality of the world. Because if you really examine some of those Blade Runner sets, they retrofitted some old Western town. It was some studio set. Those elements, the nighttime shooting with the colored gels and the rain and the smoke, all those things kind of created aesthetic, and it looked very real. So even this stuff, I think, is okay. You know, anytime it's low key, you know, the lights are out and you're adding just a few lights in there. Like if I could have gone back and did this whole film again, I would have tried to figure out a way to shoot 100% at night. Because if you shot 100% at night, it would maintain the aesthetic. We tried to make, you know, sort of a mythos to it. You know, there's a lot of flashbacks to these fights that would happen, and in this case, we're shooting in a cemetery. We would just run in and grab the scene. We would choreograph a little bit to sort of see what they're doing. And those cleavers, we took a grinder to them, so they were very flat. They were incredibly dull. And we made sure everyone saw that they were dull. You know, we were very careful and very safe. It is always a concern to have weapons on a set. I think that in the fight towards the end, there was actually like a real sword brought to the set, and we had to be like super careful with it. And I was nervous it was even there. Oh, Paul Deciman, this is Junior Mr. Massachusetts here. He really did pick up that car. We went around looking for a car that would be reasonable for him to pick up, and so he actually did pick up the back of that car. So we were trying to, and that, you know, the junkyard just sort of let us in, and we shot some stuff there. So I don't know if that would happen nowadays. My parents' basement, again, we're trying to fool it for a college campus, which, you could debate. Doesn't necessarily look like it. But we tried to add things in, you know, low-key lighting. There's like stacks of books and stuff like that. I always talk about catering. So how do you cater for all these people who are on set? Well, first of all, you have to block certain days a certain way. So the big fight scenes at the end, there's like 15 people there. You have to make sure there's food for 15 people. Typically, that's going to be lunch. And I said this before, you try to get people to just tell them, eat at home before you come to set. We try to have a lunch, and then we try to have everyone go home for dinner. So that was the way we were actually able to only have to cater like one meal per day. But everyone was on board, everyone understood, because everyone was basically kind of volunteering to be there. My parents actually catered. This was, I think when we shot it, I was probably 23, 24. They were awesome, so they'd cook like burgers and hot dogs and stuff and bring them to set. The set was either the backyard or Tungus College was 5 minutes away. And then the stuff that we'd shoot at our house, the apartment we were at, we would typically just feed ourselves there. The good thing about also is having a basic central location where everything you're shooting is less than 10 minutes away, is that everyone could kind of come back for the meal, and you know, or it could be brought out, and it's not that big of a deal. When you're writing, just keep that in mind, and then also keep in mind you can change things to look like certain things. The plot of this movie, you might be saying, what the heck is going on here? The plot of this movie is that reality kind of gets changed by this well. This well wakes up. It's almost like a multiverse story. That's the funny part. This sort of new branch of reality opens up, you know, slightly different. This was similar to a lot of the film shoots that I'm on. The characters were wearing the same clothes throughout the film, and a lot of it makes sense. This is sort of his superhero uniform. This is sort of his security outfit. We did the same thing with Everything Moves Alone and London Betty. Primarily, the characters are wearing the same clothes, and what that would mean sometimes is at the end of the day, they'd have to go home and do a load of laundry and come back early on set the next day. But, you know, not every person had to be on set for 12 hours, so they could kind of figure out when to launder their outfit and come back. Phil may have even had spare shirts and spare clothes. I think I had 2 sets of my outfits, you know. That's our buddy Joe. You see he's dressed up. The idea is that Phil has his military outfit because that's his work outfit. It's a military-themed restaurant. And they all have these weird rationalizations for why they're dressed up like Backyard Superheroes. That was a bunch of fake blood. This is a college campus. We had to clean that up. I mean, they fully knew we were shooting in there, and we cleaned up everything perfectly. So we did not steal this. We had permission to be there. This is about the character that Paul Desimone is turning into this monster, and they're showing his transition through very strange means. That was a shot. I had a pet mouse. We took the mouse out. We had a lockdown shot, had the mouse in there, pulled him out, put a firecracker in there and lit it. A jump cut where you didn't see the seam, so the mouse was totally fine, and I had that pet mouse for a while. There's a lot of sort of old school tricks we used in this movie. Maybe you think this film is silly, but know that it can be done.